was a week in my life when I lost everything at once. The job, the marriage, an apartment I'd lived in for 11 years. All within 37 days of each other. And I remember sitting on the floor of a half-empty living room, boxes stacked against the wall, dust on the windowsill, a cup of cold coffee I hadn't touched, and thinking, something is out to get me. I genuinely believed that. What I couldn't see, what I was years away from being able to see, is that something was out to get me. Just not in the way I thought. Jung spent 40 years studying why human lives seem to follow patterns that human choices don't fully explain, why the doors that close often turn out to be the ones that should have stayed closed. Why the people who vanish from our lives, the ones we grieve, the ones who hurt us by leaving, sometimes disappear right before they would have caused irreparable damage. He called it synchronicity. But he was careful about that word. He wasn't talking about magic. He wasn't talking about fate in the religious sense. He was talking about something more precise and, honestly, more unsettling. The possibility that the unconscious, yours, mine, something deeper than both, is oriented toward survival, toward wholeness, and that it will move things to protect what matters, even when your conscious mind hasn't figured out what that is yet. Here are 7 signs it's been doing that your whole life. The first sign is the path that closed right when you were about to take it. You know this one. The job offer that fell through, the relationship that ended before it really started, the plan you had to abandon because of circumstances you didn't choose. At the time, it felt like failure, like the universe was against you. Jung would say, "Look at what was on the other side of that door." Not what you imagined. What was actually there. He wrote, across his letters and clinical notes, about a distinction that I keep coming back to. The unconscious does not prevent pain. It prevents ruin. Those are different things. Pain is part of the path. Ruin is the path ending. I had a patient once, a man in his late 50s who'd spent his career as a corporate attorney. He came to the hospice where I worked because his wife was dying. And he told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "Every time I tried to leave this career, every time I had a plan to quit, something stopped me. I used to resent it. Now I realize that if I'd quit when I wanted to, I wouldn't have had the financial stability to sit by her side for 18 months without worrying about money. The career I hated turned out to be the gift I didn't know I needed." He was describing it without knowing he was describing it. That's the first sign. The second sign, someone left, or you left. And the timing was stranger than it should have been. Jung documented this repeatedly in his clinical work. Relationships that ended right before a major rupture would have occurred. Friendships that dissolved right before the friend revealed something that would have caused lasting damage. The pattern he noticed wasn't random. People in the midst of deep unconscious growth, what he called individuation, often experience sudden changes in their relational world. People fall away, not always cleanly, not always kindly, but the ones who cannot grow with you seem to find reasons to leave before the cost of staying becomes catastrophic for both parties. And here's what nobody tells you about this. It often feels like abandonment. It registers as rejection. Your conscious mind calls it loss. But stay with me here, because this is where it gets strange. Jung's scarab. You may have heard this story. A patient, highly rational, analytically minded, almost impossible to reach through conversation alone, had a dream the night before a session with Jung. In the dream, she received a piece of jewelry shaped like a golden scarab beetle. The next morning, as she sat in his consulting room describing the dream, something tapped at the closed window behind him. Jung turned, opened it, and a rose chafer beetle, the closest living species to the Egyptian scarab, flew in. He caught it, handed it to her. The woman who couldn't be reached by reason was reached by that moment. The synchronicity cracked something open that months of analysis had not. Now, hold this thought, because I'll come back to it. The beetle didn't appear because Jung needed it to. It appeared, Jung believed, because she was finally ready to receive it. The unconscious provides what the person can now use. Not before, not after, now. The people who left your life? Jung would ask, were you finally ready to become who you are without them? Third sign, a decision you made for no reason turned out to be the right one. Not a reasoned decision, not a careful calculation, a sudden knowing. A turn you took without being able to explain why. Jung called this intuition, one of the 4 fundamental functions of the psyche. And he was clear that intuition is not guessing. It is the unconscious processing information your conscious mind hasn't received yet. There's real science behind this now, and I find it oddly comforting. Decades after Jung, neuroscientist Antonio Damasio documented what he called somatic markers, the way the body registers outcomes before the mind can articulate them. People with damage to the brain's emotional centers consistently make worse decisions, not better ones, because they've lost access to this non-rational signal. Jung wrote, "Intuition is not a gift, it is a function, and like all functions, it atrophies when you don't use it, and it becomes loudest when something important is at stake. The decision that made no sense and saved you anyway. That was a reason. You just weren't fluent in that language yet." Fourth sign, you almost went somewhere, and then didn't. Or you almost didn't go somewhere, and then did. I don't mean dramatic, cinematic moments. I mean the quiet ones. The plan you canceled because you felt off. The route you changed without knowing why. The invitation you accepted even though you almost said no. Jung documented what he called protective hesitation. Moments where the psyche interrupts habitual behavior without a legible reason. He believed these interruptions were the unconscious attempting to redirect the course. I think about one morning more than I probably should. November, early, ice on the roads, still dark. I got in my car to drive to the hospice facility, the same route I'd taken hundreds of times, and then I sat there for 3 minutes without moving, something I couldn't name. I took a different road. The one I normally used had a 4-car accident that morning. I saw it from the alternate route. I'm not saying I was protected by something supernatural. I'm saying my body knew something my brain hadn't processed yet. And that is precisely what Jung spent his career describing. Fifth sign, you lost something, and what replaced it was more suited to who you actually are. This one takes time to see, usually years. Jung's concept of the self. Not the ego, not the mask you wear in public, but the deeper organizing principle of the psyche. Functions like a compass. It doesn't always point toward comfort. It points toward wholeness. And wholeness often requires losing the version of yourself that was keeping you small. When a loss creates space for something that actually fits you, the relationship that ended making room for the one that works, the career that collapsed revealing what you were actually built for, that is not accident. That is the self finding an alternate route toward the same destination. Jung said something about this that I had to read twice. The greatest problems of life are fundamentally insoluble. They must be, because they express the necessary polarity inherent in every self-regulating system. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. The loss you're still carrying? You may not need to solve it. You may need to outgrow the version of yourself it was attached to. That's different. That's slower. But that's what actually works. Sixth sign, you dreamed something before it happened. not precognition in any dramatic sense. Something subtler and, I think, more interesting. Jung documented extensively that dreams often process information the waking mind hasn't yet integrated. The unconscious works with what's available. Everything you've seen, felt, absorbed without realizing, and sometimes arrives at conclusions the conscious mind catches up to later. The dream where you sensed a relationship ending before you had clear evidence. The dream that felt like a warning about a person and turned out to be right. The dream that left you with a certainty you couldn't explain and couldn't shake. Jung called this the compensatory function of dreams, the unconscious providing what consciousness is missing or refusing to see. In the cases where a dream seems to predict, what's often happening is simpler. The unconscious had processed the signals that the waking mind dismissed or didn't want to face. And here's the callback to that scarab case. The woman who couldn't be reached wasn't missing intelligence. She was missing access. Her dreams were already processing what her mind refused to let in. Jung just created the conditions for the two parts to meet. Your intuition is not random. Your dreams are not noise. They are the part of you that was paying attention when the rest of you looked away. The seventh sign, and this one is the hardest to sit with, is that you're still here. I spent 12 years in hospice care. I sat with people at the end of their lives and with the families they were leaving behind, and the ones who had survived serious crises before. Accidents, collapses, losses of every kind often described the same strange sensation. Not that they were saved by strength or skill or good decisions, but that something had adjusted the trajectory, that they had been moved, not out of the difficult thing, through it. Moved through it toward something that could be survived. Jung was direct about this in a way that I find hard to forget. He said, "We are not only threatened by the dangers of our time, but also protected by forces we do not fully understand." Forces we do not fully understand. Not forces that prevent suffering. Not forces that explain it, or justify it, or make it fair. Forces that accompany you through it and bend the trajectory of it. Slightly, persistently, almost invisibly, towards something that can be survived, towards something that can eventually be grown through. I sat on that floor 37 days into losing everything I thought I was, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't see that the job that ended led to work that actually mattered to me. I couldn't see that the marriage that fell apart freed someone who was quietly disappearing inside it, and that someone was me. I couldn't see that the apartment I left was the place I went to avoid becoming who I needed to become. I could only see what I'd lost, not what was already rerouting. If you've made it through the worst thing that happened to you, and you're watching this, so you have, something was working in your direction, not to spare you from difficulty, but to ensure that the difficulty didn't become the end. That's not magic. That's not wishful thinking. That's what Jung spent 40 years trying to put into words. Let that sit for a moment.